Hey everybody, Wayne here. In today's overview and review, I'm taking a look at The Alamo, Final Assault, designed by Amos Burke and published by DVG. The Alamo is part of the Heroic Stand series of wargames. DVG did provide this review copy. The Alamo is a solitaire or cooperative card-based wargame that is themed around the 1836 Battle for the Alamo that occurred during the Texas Revolution. You play as the Texas defenders, while the system handles the attacking Mexican troops. Let's do a quick overview. I have a complete playthrough for an in-depth look at the game. I'll cover my pros and cons, and we'll have my final thoughts. Alright, let me do a quick overview of how the Alamo and the Heroic Stand series in general works at its core. In the Alamo, obviously you're trying to hold out, right, against the Mexican troops. Well, how do you do that within the game? The game forces are represented by the stack of Mexican troop cards. They're placed out at these different locations where different Mexican generals or colonels or other military leaders were. Morales, Marrero, Duke, and Coes. There's going to be a face-up Mexican card and a face-down card. You're going to have a hand of cards that's drawn from this deck right here. You'll start off with 6, and the number is going to go down, back up to 6, down as you're playing, and as you're playing cards, discarding them and redrawing. You're going to be playing troop value cards wherever you want to, and combat is going to be resolved in 2 rounds. First round is going to be against the card you can see. Second round is going to be against the card that's face down. So you're going to want to make sure that you have enough strength, both from your card that you're playing, which you can only play 1 card at a time, but also any bonuses. And this is where really the decision making comes in. The bonuses come from 3 different ways, or actually possibly up to 4 different ways. First off, there's these reload cards. You have a limited number of them, a very finite amount of them. You can go ahead at any point, any combat, you can take one, and it has a plus, and you see a d6 there. You get to add an additional die roll. So, say you just had your 13, you can say, you know what, I'm going to use a reload card as well, because you obviously know your 13 will not beat that 21. You're going to get to play that card. You get to roll one of these d6 and add that number to your total. Roll a 1, terrible roll. Sometimes that happens. Also, you can add in Crockett cards. You can add in as many cards as you want to each combat. Each Crockett card adds a +1. And there's this many cards. So there's a few, but not an infinite number. The thing is, though, when using these Crockett cards, after you use them, they're discarded from the game. However, at the end of the game, if you do survive the Mexican assault, you actually flip them over, whatever cards are left here in this stack, and you check for the number of Alamo stars. This card has 0, that card has 0. However, this card has 2, this card has 3, this card has 1, etc. That is going to determine your level of victory. So the more Crockett cards you use, if you do make it to the end and survive, the less high level of victory you'll have. You'll just barely eke by, which we all want to win the best, right? In addition to those 2, there's also the location. So this is where you can either play with random levels, which will determine, you'll have a certain amount of these. There's a big stack of cards. You're only going to use, I believe, 4 or 5 of them. And depending on where that location is, which you're going to reveal it, right? It's going to tell you, is there no bonus, or is there going to be a bonus die? That bonus die roll is going to be there for every combat. So if you were conducting a combat, say over here, and you have this low wall, and it has a die there, means you're fighting at the low wall, right? That's where they're assaulting you. So you're going to get a bonus die. Roll a 6 on this one. So now 14 plus 6 becomes 20. So now our 20 compares to the 21 of the enemy. All we would need would be, say, a Crockett card. We could play one. Oh, we're at 21. Equal or greater than. We defeat that card. In addition, by defeating this card that has the Texas flag in the corner, we get to draw a card. Now, some locations, as you probably saw, to the buildings, doesn't have a bonus die. No cover, obviously not going to be a bonus die. Those locations you're going to want to retreat from. So each turn, you're either holding, which you're fighting, right? Or you're going to retreat a space. The actual mechanics of that are very simple. Basically, hold is you're playing cards fighting. Retreating is you're going to go ahead and flip over, discard the card that's up, flip over the next one. You don't know what it's going to be. And then you get to draw a card. Or if you choose to follow a set difficulty, instead of using that random deck of cards, you can use these level cards. Level 1, very easiest difficulty. You're going to get a bonus die at every location. You're going to go ahead and start at the top, work your way down. So every time, you go ahead and retreat, you're going to move it down, retreat, move it down. Once it gets to the last spot, you can no longer retreat, which means you can no longer draw cards based on location. However, the higher level difficulties obviously are going to have less bonus dice, right? One less, etc. So you get all the way to level 6, which you're only going to have a bonus die at the one location. The rest locations, you're not going to have a bonus die. And then finally, you get to the last stand. You can't retreat anymore. You do get a bonus die at the very end there. The last way to gain points for attacking is there's going to be cards that are going to be certain artillery guns that are going to give you a bonus. So, for instance, there's going to be, and I just had one out here, my apologies, 6-pounder. You're going to get these cards as part of your hand. At any time, +3 to any Texan battle card. And there's different ones besides just the 6-pounder. It's also, there's in addition to the artillery cards, you saw there's some other cards in the deck. There are, say, this Davy Crockett card. Anytime discard a Mexican skirmisher card. 3-pounder, anytime, +1 any Texan battle card. So again, different size of artillery, different strengths adding to your cards. In addition to that, the Mexican cards themselves, besides just the troops with the numbers on them, they're going to have different cards as well. For instance, Final Assault. You advance a time marker 1 space on the time track, then discard and draw a new Mexican card. Now, the time track is the way you're going to lose. One of the ways you're going to lose. Mexican Skirmisher, discard the lowest Texas battle card, then draw a new card. So there's going to be different card effects. How do you win? How do you lose, right? You have to defeat every one of these cards in this deck at all the different locations. And while that happens, or when that's done, you have to make sure this track, every time those Final Assault cards are played, which the Mexican deck has them and you have them, it's going to move this track down 1, 1, 1. And eventually it's going to make it down. If it makes it to that red overrun space, you lose automatically. Also, if you burn through all your cards, you don't have any additional cards to play, you're not able to defeat the Mexican forces, obviously you're going to lose then as well. But say you do defeat all the Mexican forces, you're going to go ahead, flip over whatever Crockett cards are left, add up those Alamo stars, check in the rulebook, and see whether you're Texas Legend or a Texas Chump. That is the core of the gameplay. That should explain basically how the game works. Pretty quick overview, very simple game, easy to learn, easy to play, very fast playing as well. I do have a complete playthrough video if you want to check that out. Otherwise, I think that's it for the overview. Let's get to pros and cons. Cons first. All right, first off, the theme connection to the gameplay is basically non-existent. At the core of the game, you're putting your numbered cards up against the enemy's numbered cards, while taking advantage of bonus dice rolls from location cards or bonus cards like Reload, Davy Crockett. The mechanisms don't make you feel like you're necessarily defending the Alamo against overwhelming odds. There could be really any theme onto these mechanisms. Second, while the overall component quality is excellent, as expected from DVG, there are some mistakes on the board and in the rulebook. The sequence of play on the board is semi-correct in that it does follow kind of the sequence of play for the series in general, but it doesn't use the correct text. For example, look at the board here. The part where it tells you, okay, you can fall back or hold. Yep, that makes perfect sense. And I think I used the term retreat earlier. Fall back is what I was talking about. Hold, okay, those apply. But then when you get down to the hold part and you follow the combat sequence, those terms are not in this game. The Alamo game, the correct terms are in the rulebook. Here where it says mark your target, you don't do that. You take aim. Here it mentions volley fire. That's not part of this game. It does mention location bonus, which those apply to this game as well. You then can use a reload card, which is not listed on here. Or you can use the Crockett cards, also not listed on here. Then you do conduct combat resolution, steps A through D, fairly the same way. And then regrouping, which in here, in this game, it's reinforce. On the board, it's regroup. So I'm not sure. I haven't played the other games in the series yet. I imagine this maybe comes from the Rourke's Drift game, but this text is not actually correct, right? It gives you an idea how it works, but it's not actually correct. There's also some things in the rulebook, some tricky spots where maybe, the game's victory conditions, for example. The section that mentions how to lose mentions like, okay, you lose if this happens. But then when it mentions how to win, it doesn't say much. It basically says if you survive to the end, which it's like, well, and then what? But then what besides? And what does it mean to survive to the end? It's just not spelled out. However, I will say Amos Burke, the designer, was quick to answer my question on Board Game Geek. In the end, the game is so simple that it's not hard to learn, but there's also so little text in it overall between the very short rulebook and then the few things printed on the board that I wish, they had done another pass or two just to make sure what was printed on the board and in the rulebook is accurate to this game. Finally, I do have to say the game almost feels overproduced. I don't normally talk about the price of games for many reasons, some of which is because everyone pays different amounts for games, depends on where they buy them. And I personally often receive review copies. For example, this is one. But I do want to talk about, in this case, for what is essentially a quick playing card game, you're getting a mounted board, which, while nice, is not necessary at all. In fact, sometimes I found the cards slipped a little bit on the board and they would kind of rotate as I was setting them down. You'll see that happen in my playthrough. It doesn't affect the gameplay at all, and it's just kind of a visual thing. I did look up what this game went for during the Kickstarter for you to back it and what I'm seeing it listed for with online retailers. And although the price is definitely seems to be lower than, maybe a full boxed war game with a bunch of counters, I do worry it may be a little high for what you get in the box. Okay, that's it for the cons. On to the pros. First off, the game is so quick to set up and play. This is one of those games you can play before you play a larger game, or you can play this one a few times in a row as a complete experience. You lay out the board, shuffle the decks, start drawing and playing cards. And if you felt comfortable playing without the board, which would be easy enough as it just provides, the spaces and this one track which you would need to find a way to replicate, you could just carry the cards and dice around and actually have a portable wargaming experience. Second, while luck is a huge part of the game, I actually found myself enjoying the luck and dice rolling. Because it plays so quickly and each combat is resolved in basically seconds, even if I rolled poorly or I didn't feel like maybe I had a great choice of cards to make, at that point in time, all I had to do was play through that combat, and basically seconds later, I would be, maybe drawing another card, choosing to fall back, or just fighting another combat, choosing when to discard or play my special cards. I mentioned those special cards you can do, the special actions you can take, etc. Third, the game has more decision-making involved than it's being given credit for. You may just, at the core, be matching up your numbered cards against the cards on the board, but you have to take advantage of the location die bonuses, and you have to limit your use of certain bonus cards, right? Remember the Alamo stars? So, if you don't, you could end up winning, but if you have no Alamo stars, it creates a sort of Pyrrhic victory. You have to be efficient with your cards, and that's where the game, for me, it started to feel like a puzzle. How can I solve the puzzle without using up too many of my bonus cards and without falling back too often, which, hurts you in the end? Fourth, and finally, replayability is high in this game due to how short it is, how easy it is to learn, and the sheer amount of luck and randomness inherent in the system. The core mechanisms remain the same, but the value of the cards, when they make an appearance, the makeup of your hand, all that is going to change game to game and during and throughout each game. All right, that's it for my pros and cons. Let's end with my final thoughts. Amos Burke, the designer of the Alamo, has done a surprisingly good job making a light, quick playing card war game. Now, you're probably wondering why I use the word surprisingly. Well, right now, the game has some poor scores on Board Game Geek. And after I've played it now multiple times, and I am always going to give my honest feelings about a game and how a game plays and whether I enjoy it or not. I'm wondering if those scores aren't indicative of this actual game, but rather those people's expectations of it. This game is lighter than probably any DVG game and lighter than the vast majority of board war games you are ever going to play. Now, if you compare it to games outside of wargaming, it's not the lightest game I've ever played. But I know some people who maybe focus on war games, or that's just where their hobby interest lies, they don't have experience with those. I was fortunate enough to go into this knowing this was a very light card game. I wasn't promised more, nor did I expect more. And honestly, that's exactly what I got. The theme is fun, you know. Now, I don't exactly own a ton of games covering the Alamo, so that's part of it, right? And yes, it is definitely detached from the gameplay. But the theme on it is fun. The artwork, seeing it on the cards, you know, having the Alamo Final Assault written on here, the countdown board. I don't know. There's something about it that just clicked with me. You know, and besides that, you know, the gameplay itself, it just feels like a puzzle. It feels like a math puzzle that is influenced by dice and knowing when, or perhaps gambling on when, to use those bonus cards and dice. At the end of the day, you know, this game made me feel good after I defeated that last stack of Mexican troop cards and I counted up my Alamo stars. And isn't that why most of us play these games? To have a good time? Alright, thank you everyone for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please let me know what you think of my video and this game in the comments below. And until next time, everybody, later.